Good evening. I'm Tim Bolton, Head of Programmes here at Dartington, and on behalf of everyone at Schumacher College in Dartington, I would like to welcome you to this, our third online Joy of Six Schumacher College Earth Talk. And thank you all so much for supporting the work of Schumacher College. We've been holding Earth Talks for a number of years, face-to-face in the old postern, and occasionally the Great Hall at Dartington. It's a fundamental part of our learning community, and we look forward to doing so again as soon as it's practical. However, Schumacher College has a very long history of debate and research around our ecological and environmental catastrophe, and it feels important in this moment of global crisis that we reach out to our community, alumni, and those in search of a new normal. As in previous talks, the audience is global, and even the presenters are spread out across the UK. So although most of us are currently in lockdown, the world increasingly feels interconnected, and all of us increasingly interdependent. This talk is the third in the series of 6, which take place every week on a Wednesday evening, and which I hope you will also want to attend. And indeed, we're just finalising the next 6 talks. So first, a few words about the format of the evening. Now, we were just having a couple of technical problems about who had permissions to show their screens and so on. So hopefully we will sort all of that out. But so we may have 1 or 2 glitches, but hopefully not. In a moment, I'll hand over to Professor Rupert Read to present his talk. We do want the session to be as accessible and interactive as possible. So please do use the chat button on the bottom of your screen to share thoughts with us and your fellow audience members. And we'd really welcome questions throughout using the Q&A link, again at the bottom of the window. Rupert might respond to some of the questions as we go along, and I'll have a chance to put other questions to him during and at the end of the presentation. In total, we anticipate this part of the session to last about an hour. Straight after the questions, Skeena Rathore will lead a guided meditation for about 30 minutes. And she asked that you have a candle ready for this part of the session. Hopefully that message went out earlier. Skeena Rathore co-leads the XR Vision Sensing Group, the spiritual centre of XR. She is also an elected councillor on Stroud District Council and a national spokesperson for XR, who has appeared widely on TV and radio. As a particular badge of honour, Skeena is famous for being harangued by Piers Morgan, who, missing the big picture as normal or indulging in diversion tactics, who could say, wanted to know if Skeena had a TV. A hostile challenge in which she defended herself brilliantly and with a calmness that I doubt many of us could manage. But let me introduce you to this evening's speaker, Professor Rupert Read. Rupert is one of the definitive spokespersons on the collapse and is the co-author of This Civilization is Finished. He's been a frequent spokesperson for Extinction Rebellion, a role involving meetings with senior politicians from across the political spectrum. He represents Extinction Rebellion on national radio and television, including Radio 4's Today programme and the BBC Question Time and Politics Live. He teaches philosophy at the University of East Anglia and created, until recently led, the Philosophy of Presence group in Norwich. He was taught by Joanna Macy, Richard Rorty and Stanley Cavell. Welcome, Rupert, and hopefully over to you if the technology works.
Thanks, Tim. Are you able to start my video?
Yep, I will find a way. Perhaps if you can start talking and I will get you your video as quickly as possible.
Okay, right. So yeah, that was a lovely introduction. Thank you so much, Tim. And it's a great pleasure to be here at Dartington, if only virtually. I look forward to hopefully seeing many of you in Dartington and in Schumacher next year. At exactly this time next year, myself and Skeena and a couple of other colleagues will be leading a course which is a sort of, if you will, a kind of full-length version of the short talk, the Earth talk that I am giving you here tonight. And I think my video is about to start. Any luck? Is it starting? Yes, there I am. Hello. Thanks, Tim. So yeah, so if you like what you hear this evening, do come along and join us for the week-long course at Schumacher in May of 2021, coronavirus permitting. Okay, this evening I'm talking about eco-spirituality at the moment of our last chance. So I want to start off by saying something directly to you, something personal. Different wisdom traditions have, I believe, something critically important in common. There is an eternal wisdom that runs through them all, whether it's Stoicism or Buddhism or Christian mysticism, whatever it is. And at the heart of that is this simple and impossibly difficult idea that what one ought to do is truly to accept one's situation. Truly accept your situation, accept the present moment. This idea, I think, is found in all of the great wisdom traditions. And it's an idea that is profoundly right. It's not a coincidence that it's found in them all. So that is something which I invite you to do, to accept the present moment, to accept it all. And that's the crucial point here. You have to accept it all. You have to accept your difficult emotions, accept your resistance to those emotions, accept your non-acceptance. This would be what is called one-sided acceptance by Eckhart Tolle, for example. One-sided acceptance, accept it all. Now turning to the level of the global, to the world. I've said something about the microcosm. How can this work at the level of the macrocosm? Because it seems clear that at the level of the world, there are things that are and must remain unacceptable. I'm just going to name a few now. Torture, the needless suffering of innocence, gross injustice, careless damage to the life prospects of future generations. So there seems an ineradicable tension. On the one hand, we have spirituality, which rightly preaches acceptance. And on the other hand, we have political activism, which might be defined in a positive sense as the struggle to change the macrocosmically unacceptable. So spirituality seems condemned to the private realm, unsuitable for the public or political. Spirituality, if extended there in particular, runs the risk of legitimating the non-legitimate, the unacceptable. And indeed, it is true that religions and spiritualities, unfortunately, have often taught this. Often they've taught acquiescence in abuses of power. They've taught people to know their place. They've taught abject humbleness to emperors or kings. They've taught opposition to radical or revolutionary political programs. What I say is, we all know that we must have politics, justice, radical, macrocosmic change. But far from this meaning that we should oppose spirituality, we must have an engaged spirituality to help us do this. It's part of our last hope. I'll explain what I mean by that in a moment, although I suspect you already know. It's part of our last hope for being able to do this. Without the grounding, authentic power of spirituality, there is little hope. And furthermore, I say that true spirituality is acceptance, acceptance of it all. But how can I possibly marry saying these things, which are seemingly so in contradiction with each other, given the seeming stark opposition between spirituality and politics that I've set up? Well, here's how. By thinking through what it could actually mean to embrace the present moment macrocosmically, just as we seek to do microcosmically. And let's start by noting that there's really no alternative but to do this. For the microcosm and the macrocosm are one. the separation between them is artificial, impossible. No person is an island. Spirituality and religion have gone wrong most often when they have turned against the world, denied reality, sought to pretend it doesn't exist or can be wished away. You do not exist except as part of this world. They're inextricable. You're inextricable. There are so many places where we find this teaching. I'd like to mention a couple which might not be immediately obvious to you, but I think powerfully express this and have great resonance in our popular culture, which I think is a hopeful sign. Lord of the Rings and Avatar, both, I think, are centrally concerned with the ineradicable fact that you are part of this world. And also the great teaching of eco-psychology. Tim mentioned my teacher, Joanna Macy, who is among those who teach the beautiful and deep truth that there is no way of separating your mind from the world, and that mental health is actually being attuned to the state of the world. So, spiritual wisdom for the individual begins with the endeavor no longer to deny one's own experience, no longer to hide from the now. And it has to include one's non-separation from all that is, from the world. The non-denial of one's own experience, the non-hiding from the now, has to be applied to the world and not just to yourself. Because, as I've just said, there is no separation between us and the world. It is spiritual delusion to suppose that you can exist apart from this world. So here's the question that I want to ask you. What would be the consequences if you really allowed yourselves to see, if we really allowed ourselves to see, to witness, to feel the suffering and the joy beyond ourselves? If we really allowed ourselves to be touched by others' lives, to open ourselves fully to them? If more specifically, we really turned toward, rather than away from, the suffering of innocence, or the careless damage being done to our non-human kin, or to the prospects of future generations? How could we not be profoundly changed by this great turning, a turning toward, a full facing of reality? Perhaps we think it would break us. Well then, do it carefully, even gingerly or slowly perhaps. Do it with others, but do it all the same. My claim is that if we really do this, if we really did this, our life probably turns upside down. If we face up to climate reality, then we can do no other than to jump into the stream of Extinction Rebellion or something like that. You see then, perhaps, the resolution that I'm suggesting of the apparent contradiction between spirituality and political activism. If you really face the state of the world in this moment, if you really dare to look into it, if you really dare to accept that this is how the world is, a place where we are heading fast off a cliff and dragging most other creatures with us, and indeed dragging our children with us over the cliff. If you really do this, then nothing is ever the same again. Accepting that this is the reality, we might say that that is the beginning and the end of engaged spiritual practice, and that there's really no alternative to such practice. So I'm asserting that exactly this is the spiritual task today: to look reality in the eye and then be. For what you will then be is something of incredible emotional and practical power and determination and groundedness. Remember, truly accepting the present moment is not suppressing your resistance to that moment. It is accepting your resistance to that moment. Try not to be dualistic in your spiritual response to the now. What do I mean by that word dualistic? I have in mind the meaning of it, which was used by the great Zen teacher, Shunryu Suzuki, author of Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. He said, look, it's dualistic if you do not, in your spiritual practice, in your spiritual response, embrace whatever is there. If you try to separate it out into the good part and the bad part, the part you're willing to embrace and the part you're not, that's not really the practice. The practice is to embrace them all. Don't be dualistic then in your spiritual response to the now. Perceive clearly. Feel what you feel. And then I think you will find that you will rebel against the status quo. Globally and locally speaking, this moment, the incipient post-coronavirus reset, is almost certainly our last chance to mount a successful rebellion against the civilization that is driving us all off a cliff. Why? Well, these moments don't come along very often. The last one was in 2008 with the financial crisis. That's over a decade ago. Extinction Rebellion says by 2025 in countries like this, we need to stop emitting climate deadly carbon and we need to stop destroying biodiversity and ecosystems. The next crisis of this magnitude will probably not come until well after 2025. This is a moment of possible reset. It is the last one we are going to have before the clock's up. The last chance to face reality and respond accordingly. What exactly does that mean, respond accordingly? What exactly do I think, do I want to say to you, is this the last chance for? Not, I'm afraid, for the complete change you probably dream of, not for utopia. We are not going to solve all society's ills in the next 12 months or even the next 5 years. Again, we have to keep facing reality. Don't focus only on the absolutely wonderful things that this horrendous crisis that we're in right now has brought in its train. Don't focus only on the clear skies, the challenge to pointless commuting, the return of nature. Dare to see also the strong men around the world gaining in power, the bailouts of carbon and other destructive industries that are already starting. And don't cherry pick. Notice, for example, the enormous difficulty that public transport is in now. That was supposed to be part of the solution, right? Notice that digital behemoths are gaining enormously in power. Consider what's going to happen when air travel starts to resume in greater volume. Perhaps there'll be half the number of flights that there are right now. But what if on those flights, everybody is only allowed to take up 1 out of every 3 seats? Well, then that means that a lot of planes will be flying largely almost empty, and then there'll be a demand for more planes so that people can be physically distanced from each other. This is our last chance, but not for a childish fantasy of getting everything that we politically want. It's our last chance for a proper, authentic emergency response. And the thing which is so remarkable about the coronavirus crisis is that it has given us something far more salient to our real needs than anything that was present in the warp and weft of the 2008 financial crisis. The coronavirus crisis is a crisis of shared vulnerability, of shared emergency. Dougald Hind of the Dark Mountain Group has called it a planetary crisis of parental mortality, which I think is one very beautiful, accurate way of putting it. Amidst the horror of this pandemic, this shared vulnerability is actually a gift. It's a greater gift than anything that was present in 2008, the last such crisis, as I've said, which was squandered. This is our last chance to acknowledge our shared vulnerability, above all, of course, to the longer emergency, to the climate emergency, to ecosystem devastation. And of course, it's worth reminding ourselves here that the pandemic itself is an expression of that, caused by habitat destruction, maltreatment of animals, and then accelerated by reckless globalization in the form especially of air travel. This is our last chance to acknowledge our shared vulnerability that we are experiencing right now, to acknowledge reality, and so to rise up together at scale to a level never previously managed before. If we do that, we may get to avoid collapsing civilization, or at least ensure a softer landing. That's the prize. Not continuing this civilization powered by green, nor even transitioning smoothly to the next one. We have to be more realistic than that. The prize now is just finding a way of transformatively adapting to our damaged world and of transformatively refiguring that world as we can. And maybe thereby avoiding mass death that would otherwise make the corona pandemic look small. The prize is also to learn from the great mistakes and crimes which have brought us to the desperate point that we're in now. And if we really do so learn, then we redeem even those mistakes. Our spiritual task is, once again, simply then, to really accept this moment. To really accept the great responsibility upon each of us. To welcome the feelings that show up to greet it. I invite you to begin by accepting the truth in what I'm saying, and by not denying your resistance to that truth, nor indeed, of course, by denying any insight or passion that you may have that suggests a real limitation to or flaw in that truth. I'm calling then, once more, for good, one-sided acceptance. I'm calling for us to move beyond dualism. That movement is freedom. And that is this moment of last chance. Not for everything to be fine, but for us to live in truth and to power ourselves for the last best hope of preventing a devastating eco-driven civilizational collapse. So my vision is of this acceptance of reality rippling out till it transforms reality. Just as much as realistically in the limited time frame we have, we can hope to. Just as much as we can hope so to transform it. So once again, there is no new age fantasy here that everything will magically become exactly as we had so dearly hoped it would be. Rather, all manner of things will be as well as they can possibly be, at each and any moment, just insofar as we are truly present to reality, through allowing it to be truly present to us. We're taught by Pema Chodron that this moment is our perfect teacher. This is true of the entire world right now. That's what I'm saying. The real question is, what will you become if you truly let the state of the world as it is instruct you? The world, in its dire imperfections, is perfect right now, just insofar as you, just insofar as we, allow ourselves compassionately to rise up to our full power in response to those imperfections. Everything is in divine and perfect order in the world. If we allow ourselves to truly feel the places where saying exactly that feels entirely outrageous to us. For example, for you. So when I say everything is in divine and perfect order in the world, what rises up in you saying, no, that can't be because of such and such? Well, what I'm saying is just insofar as that is your reaction and you really mean it and you follow through on it, then everything is in divine and perfect order in the world. For then we are fueled in ways we hitherto could not have dreamt of, by outrage and by love. Because at the root of grief, at the root of shared pain, at the root of rage, is always love. So, to conclude, everything is in divine perfect order right now, if only our attitude to it is right. That attitude is one of acceptance, but not the passive acceptance of acquiescence or quiescence. Rather, the loving, active, raging, trusting, magnificent acceptance that I've sought to outline in this Earth Talk. Everything is perfect, just as soon as you, just as soon as we are willing to look at it, willing to look at what is with the eyes of awakening. For then you will make manifest what we need, a beautiful eco-spirituality at this moment of last chance. Thank you so much for listening. I look forward now to hearing what you've got to say in response to this and what it brings up in you, because that will be the proof of it. Tim, will you make a start?
Thank you so much, Rupert. We've got the same problem with the cameras, but don't worry about me. You stay on the screen. Such a profound conversation and really exciting to be part of it. But I just wondered if we could maybe start. You talked about strong men gaining power at the moment, and that certainly feels like against the kind of hope that you're suggesting in terms of finding a spirituality. It feels more like our society is turning to its base animal instincts as opposed to its higher instincts, the kind of childish reaction of mine, not yours, of avarice and not taking just enough.
Yeah.
And I wonder how you square those two things together.
Yeah. So the way I square them is this. I say that we have to be willing to accept or even embrace both. And in particular, that we have to start by not denying the reality of what is happening in countries like Hungary, for example, where Viktor Orban has seized dictatorial power through the coronavirus, not to deny what's happening in terms of the increase of the power of surveillance around the world, everywhere really, but especially in places like China and Israel, and indeed to some significant extent in this country. We have to not deny those things. Now, next, we have to be willing to acknowledge that it's, to say the least, incredibly unlikely that they're all simply going to disappear, however strongly we respond to them. So that's part of what it is to be balanced in our realistic response to what is happening, and not to deny the things that you've just said. But then there is our powerful response of anger, incongruence, whatever it might be, with those strong men arising, and with the way that certain people are finding, as you say, their baser instincts being aroused by this pandemic situation. And if we allow ourselves to really feel that kind of frustration, rage, whatever, then all sorts of things become possible. Like, for example, maybe it's possible to do something about Viktor Orban and Hungary if enough people care about it. You know, unfortunately, right now in the UK, we're sort of halfway out of the EU. But even so, we can still have an influence, and much more so, the countries that are still in the EU could have an influence if they were determined enough to do so. And what does that mean, them being determined enough to do so? Well, part of what that means is their citizens being determined enough that something like this matters. So if we really feel and notice what's happening with these atavistic instincts, with the rise of these strong men, etc., And if rather than just getting down about that and feeling disempowered, if we allow ourselves to be powered by that kind of sense of outrage, lack of congruence, etc., then who knows what may be possible. So my message is, on the one hand, accept reality. Don't think something like with full spiritual power, with enough determination, anything can change completely and overnight, because that's a recipe for endless disappointment and burnout. But also don't limit your sense of your own power. Really, you only find how powerful you are, and we only find how powerful we are, because of course virtually all real change happens through collectives. When we actually try to do it, you only find the limit when you allow yourselves without limit to respond to the situation and to rise up accordingly. So yeah, I think that it's a question of not setting yourself up for a fall, not limiting yourself, being realistic, but also being open to the possibility that extraordinary things that seem impossible may be possible. And surely that is one thing that the pandemic has already taught us, that all sorts of things that we thought were not possible may be possible, or indeed are actual. You know, look at the way that governments have moved mountains, in some cases to save their people, in other cases to save their economies. We were told that there wasn't a magic money tree, but it turns out there is, right? So I think that the pandemic crisis itself, in very short order, has enabled us to get a better sense of something which is foundational for the kind of hope that I think there is, that I've tried to invest this talk with, that many things that we thought were impossible, there's no good reason to believe they're actually impossible. That doesn't mean that everything is going to be fine. Everything is not going to be fine. As I said, we have to be ready to learn from the mistakes and from the terrible sufferings and so on that are coming. That's another part of accepting what is.
Thank you, Rupert. Thank you. Can I ask some of the questions from
yeah, please.
They're coming up both in terms of the chat and in terms of the questions. And several people have brought me up about using the word animal, and I agree that's probably an inappropriate term. But hopefully most of us get a sense of what I meant, which was about
yeah.
It comes from the gut, from an immediate reaction, unmetered, unmediated by a thought process. Is I think what I meant, but I'm digging myself a bigger hole.
No, you're doing fine.
So, Charlotte, Three Planned asks, sorry, my question is, where are the political leaders who really get it? And why aren't enough people who really get it currently in politics? Or perhaps they are, but the systems and the cultures of government are too powerful for individuals to work within it.
Yeah.
The level of ambition and urgency that we need.
That's a great question. It's a big question, or series of questions, really. I'll start out with the first bit, because I think that kind of concrete way of putting it can be quite helpful. Where are the political leaders who really get it? And the exemplar that I'm going to hold up is Prime Minister Ardern of New Zealand. The thing which is extraordinarily impressive about New Zealand is that they have shown very clearly in recent months in fact, obvious fact, but a fact that many in this country and the United States are in denial about, that actually, if you tackle the pandemic in a serious way, you're also doing the thing which is best for the economy. Because we are facing now a sort of likely sort of nightmare situation in this country of 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. We've got no bloody idea of the pandemic interfering with everything, maybe more lockdowns, etc., etc. In New Zealand, they suppressed the virus, and they may be on the way to eliminating it. They're an island nation, an Anglo nation like us, but they took a completely different approach. But what's so interesting and so encouraging, and why I'm bringing this up in response to Charlotte's question, is that Arden is also a leader who has seen very clearly that it is business as usual which has got us into the appalling hole that we are in, and that we need to find some different way forward. So in particular, New Zealand has adopted a policy of moving beyond gross domestic product as a measure of success, and is looking at taking seriously measures of well-being and so forth instead. So there are other leaders I could point to, but I think she is a very powerful one, because she combines a sort of new paradigm approach to political economy with a very serious precautionary approach to stopping the pandemic from getting a hold in her country. And that situation gives me a considerable amount of hope. But you know, the real big answer to Charlotte's question is that what I'm asking for is what I'm sort of praying for and seeking to elicit is something which is far bigger than that. It's something far bigger than one person, far bigger than one set of exemplars, far bigger than one country. I'm talking about a real arising and transformation of consciousness, which is not kept in some kind of narrow, private, alleged spiritual realm, which, as I've said, doesn't really, I think, exist at all, but which is allowed to beautifully spill over, and as I tried to put it, ripple out across lives and across the world. It's a very big ask, but we're in a very unique moment. The moment that I've described as the moment of last chance, and more specifically, the moment of this pandemic, which has given us this possibility, this window, through giving us this shared experience of shared vulnerability, of shared emergency, the experience of the importance of care, this wide understanding. Look at the fascinating opinion polls that show that Britons overwhelmingly prefer to value life over economic growth. If there's a conflict between the two, as I say, there isn't actually a sane conflict between care and the economy. But if there was, British people are saying we would choose care, and that's wonderful. That is something new. That is why there is some real hope at this moment, that we just might get it enough to take advantage of this last chance.
Thank you. Thanks, Rupert. Can I ask a bit about, the notion of eco-spirituality, but I don't hear a great deal of eco in many of the kind of organized faith groups that exist. So that sense of it being so core to our spiritual selves. Do you have any kind of reflections on why that is? Why, is it the vested interests of the shares of the Church of England or something, or the what's behind us?
That's a very interesting specific question. There are serious concerns about the share portfolio of the Church of England, I learned recently. So yeah, anyone who's involved in that church might want to get busy on that. So you're asking kind of, why is this? Why hasn't there been as much eco in spirituality and in religion as there could have been and should have been? That again is, of course, absolutely huge question. Part of it goes back to things like, problematic anthropocentric notions in the monotheisms, but not only there either. It's surprising, how little genuine ecology and eco-consciousness there is in most of Buddhism, for example. What is, of course, hopeful is that this situation has been changing. So you mentioned the Church of England. I've been very encouraged by the brilliance and bravery of Rowan Williams in recent years, who was one of the first to come out and join us as a notable public figure in open support of Extinction Rebellion. In relation to Buddhism, there's been a real growth in ecological thinking in recent years. Thich Nhat Hanh is a famous example, but there are many others. Yeah, I think that really is a wave that we need to catch and grow and manifest. That's what I'm calling for this to become a far more central aspect of spirituality, and for us to see the crisis that we are in as a crisis which is, among other things, plainly a spiritual crisis, and that is unlikely to be addressed adequately without that aspect of it being addressed adequately. And a sort of outline of what it would be to address it adequately was what I sought to summarize in this talk.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is more of a comment than a question, but I apologize. There are so many comments and questions going on, and I will try to get into as many of them as I possibly can. But Finnegan Clark says, when we campaigned against airport expansion in Bristol, we could have spent a long time being rageful against the strong men of the airport owners. We instead pushed against a half-open door and focused on the planners who were going to be making the decision. We love bombed them. We made relationships with them. We touched into our collective power, and we won.
Yeah, it's a brilliant achievement what's happened at Bristol, and of course there were a number of such airport-related achievements happening in the last few months in the run-up to the pandemic, which is very encouraging. Now, of course, the pandemic changes the context completely. Gives us enormous possibilities for going way, way further in terms of rolling back air travel. Although, as I said, we need to be realistic. It's not all going to be one-way traffic. There are going to be difficulties. There are going to be people who want to flip back to business as usual, and when there are no longer quarantines, they're going to be desperate for their foreign holidays. There are going to be pressures to have more flights which are more sparsely populated with passengers to keep them and staff safe, etc. So there is a huge task to be undertaken here to follow up, for example, on the superb legal judgment which is now being appealed, stopping the third runway at Heathrow. But really, the essence of the comment that we just heard was about the importance of love. And not just rage. And with that, I completely agree. I spoke more in this talk than I usually do about rage, because I think that was necessary because of the very controversial thing that I was saying when I said, look, there is a very real sense that I want you to look at, to feel into, in which the world, just as it is right now, is okay. That itself can seem an outrageous thing to say. And I think that anger very definitely is an energy, and an energy that we need to tap. But as I said, actually what is more fundamental is love. Love is at the root of all other complex emotions, in my opinion. And in terms of method, yeah, very often a loving method will be more effective than a method that proceeds by way of rage. That, of course, is intricately connected with the principles and values of Extinction Rebellion, with the absolute priority given to non-violence, and to the sense in which what we are talking about here, what we have to be talking about, is, if it's a revolution, it's a compassionate revolution. And yeah, that's what I've been trying to outline, and hoping that we're going to get more of, because we need a lot more of it.
Thank you, Rupert. Sarah Hudson asks, why do you say your approach is spiritual rather than philosophical? Does faith play any part, or is it because you recognize the validity of emotions as well as intellect?
That's a nice question, and it's certainly not the case that my approach is spiritual as opposed to philosophical. I am a philosopher, and this talk that I've given this evening really comes out of the work that I did in the group that Tim mentioned at the start, the Philosophy of Presence group that I created in Norwich a couple of years ago. So yeah, it's philosophical. Why do I call it spiritual as well? Well, partly because what I take myself to be drawing upon is wisdom traditions which are not exclusively philosophical, but are very much spiritual. For me, Buddhism and certain specific Buddhist traditions, including Zen, also some strands of Tibetan and so on, are very important. Additionally, I call it spiritual because you could see it as an approach which not only, as you say, draws on emotions as opposed to a rational thought, but also that proceeds in a kind of, that necessarily proceeds in a kind of meditative fashion, right? I don't think the idea of the kind of total acceptance which is threaded through what I'm trying to say is an idea which one could have got from philosophy alone. I mean, there are philosophers who've put forward ideas more or less like that. You can see a version of that idea in Nietzsche. You can see a version of it in Schopenhauer. Actually, arguably, Schopenhauer actually got it from Hinduism anyway, so that was as much spiritual or religious as it was philosophical. But the heart of the idea is an idea which I think is integral to meditation, including to my own experience of meditation. The basic idea in meditation is to accept whatever thought or whatever it is, sensation, etc., arises, and that is I think a spiritual practice. It's true to say that, unlike, I'm sure, some people on this call, I'm not inclined to place a central role upon any kind of supernaturalistic truth or force. And if I talk about faith, then it's a kind of faith in ourselves in a certain sense, and a kind of faith in the world, and a faith in what is, rather than faith in the sense in which that term is often used in contexts such as religious faith. So I hope that answers the question. At the end of the day, I don't really mind if you want to say that this is more of a philosophy than a spirituality, fine. But I think it actually can be seen as a way of kind of drawing together philosophical thinking with thinking which is pretty plainly the kind of thinking and the kind of practice that comes from recognizably, strikingly spiritual traditions.
Thank you. Thanks very much. There are a number of questions which have a kind of similar theme to them, which is around the idea of people talking about how we're all in this together. And then I think it moves fairly quickly through people like Elise Phillips and Sophie Lovett and Reza, talking about how that actually isn't a fair comment, given the way in which the poor and the working class find themselves in a completely different position. And so I think the comment then moves to, we're more in the same ship, or is it the same boat, but we're in the same storm, but on different boats.
Mm.
I wonder, going back to that kind of sense of a spiritual position in relation to this, which in some ways for me feels like it's probably about aestheticism, or not aestheticism as much as anything else. Presumably there are a group of people who will try and use any intervening time over the next few years as we approach impending crises to make sure they shin as far up the ladder onto the lovely big cruise ship and leave the rest of us in canoes.
Mm.
And I wonder how we try and respond to that, how we make sure that we try and level I'm getting into too many vessel metaphors, but level the marina.
Yeah. Nice, very, very important. Let me just start off with a brief remark about the aesthetic and the spiritual, because that is something which I would like to have a chance to go into more, maybe on another occasion. For me, the world is beautiful and the world is sacred. I have a strong sense of all of nature and therefore actually all of everything being sacred, and also some more specific sense of certain places being really sacred. And that is something which I think is vital to preserve at this time, and I think it can and will grow, because I think that part of what it is to think seriously about, to take seriously the idea of an eco-spirituality and to understand that this really is an idea whose time has come, is to see that conventional notions of monotheism, for example, which have been so powerful in this country and around the world for millennia, are not necessarily very well suited to a time when consciousness of shared vulnerability is rising, and a sense of the importance and the interconnection of everything is rising and becoming more central, a kind of pantheistic or panentheistic sense. Now, that sense of everything being interrelated is, of course, related to the central thrust of the questions that you were just asking there, yeah? And what I'd like to say is this. On the one hand, we really are all in this together. In terms of the pandemic, for example, your health is my health. At the end of the day, we don't have a healthy world if we have some part of the world which is unhealthy. We don't have a healthy society if we have some part of society that is unhealthy. It is in everyone's interest to take seriously, therefore, the interests of the packed together slum dwellers, as it might be, yeah. And in particular, it's clearly of in everyone's interest to take seriously the interest of key workers, of carers, etc. We need to go further than that, though, and that's, I'm sure, the thrust of many of these questions. It is outrageous that key workers should be as vulnerable as they've been made by our government. It is outrageous that the super rich have been able, to a large extent, to insulate themselves from physical risk, and that outrage is, again, you know, that's the exact kind of thing that I was trying to make central in my talk. That can be an enormous force for change. The facing of the reality of our world, the coming to see clearly the sense in which we're not all in this together, can be an extraordinarily powerful device if we are willing to really, really feel it and go with it, for moving us in the direction of us being all in this together, of a greater equality. And surely that's what we have to want out of this. That the experience of shared vulnerability segues into a recognition of it being wrong for that not to be genuinely shared, and for us to find a true equality in this situation. So I think that there is enormous potential now, for example, starting with something concrete and not world-shattering, but really, really important. There is enormous potential now for demanding greater social justice vis-a-vis wage levels of those who do jobs that actually matter, yeah, like being a carer or being a food seller, compared to jobs which are basically irrelevant or destructive, like being various kinds of financier. There are huge possibilities now for that. And part of what has to happen, if we're going to seize this last chance, is the post-corona reset. Needs to be a reset that absolutely draws on and makes real those senses of outrage, injustice that come from seeing clearly what is happening right now and not shying away from it.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rupert. I think we've got time for one more question. I really apologise to everybody that we haven't been able to look at all of the chat and all of your questions. I am trying to pick through them to try and keep a kind of stream of consciousness, and I really apologise, but it's great to see all of the ideas and thoughts going on. So a question here from Beatrice Carinheiro from Brazil, by the looks of things. And she says, I have a very personal question, but it doesn't seem personal to me. I think it's an issue for all of us. Rupert said we can gain hope through England's choice of care over economy. I'm Brazilian, and here our situation is brutally different. How do we not lose hope facing such strong opinions that reinforce hatred every day? We are facing reality head on, but how can we run away from spiritual mental burnout?
Gosh, yeah, I think you're so right, Tim. That is a question which should pierce the heart of all of us. The situation in Brazil is so awesomely terrible, because Brazil is a huge country where there is enormous injustice to many of those in that country, and where there is terrible suffering right now. For example, to give one small, concrete, absolutely vital example, among indigenous peoples who are being exposed to COVID-19 and so on and so forth. You've got Bolsonaro causing absolute mayhem in Brazil, mayhem to the people, mayhem to the Amazon. But the situation in Brazil, I'm not an expert on Brazil at all, but the situation in Brazil does strike me as one of those situations which is extraordinarily unstable now. This is a moment where things become possible, as we've been saying, that simply were not possible before. I think it was overwhelmingly likely that Trump was going to be re-elected until this virus came along. Bolsonaro is losing some of his allies, losing some of his public respect and support. And I think that in Brazil, you're going through appalling traumas at the moment. But it might be that something comes out of this which is very, very different. I think Brazil is one of those countries where we could see a huge turning in the next few months or over the next year or something. And that's really the main point I would make, that I think that we can find hope in the very kind of wreckage and disaster that we see in a situation like that. It's somewhat similar here in the UK. I'm astonished by how well support for the government and for its policy is holding up, given the mass manslaughter that the government have wreaked here, more or less knowingly. But I think that is starting to wane, and opinion polls are showing that. And I think there is everything to play for politically in this country, the UK, as in many others. But to return, if this is my final remark, to the bigger picture of what I was trying to say in the talk, we are only going to get what we need if people like us on this call are willing to go to a whole new different level. I'm sure that some of you are already at that level, but for many of us, and I don't exclude myself here, there are possibilities of action, of sacrifice, of rethinking, of authenticity, which I think we've still only just begun to dream of or grapple with or indeed resist. And it is going to need many of us to reach for those and to realize those and to manifest the arising consciousness, which has been to some extent made possible by the coronavirus pandemic. It is going to need many of us to do that if we're going to have any realistic chance of seizing this last chance. Remembering, as I've said, that the chance as I describe it is not even for things to be brilliant and perfect. It's basically for us to have a decent level of flourishing and not to collapse. So I'd love you all to take that away and reflect on it. If you are impressed at all by anything that I've said to you this evening, what does it actually mean for you and for your life? That's, at the end of the day, the real question.
Thank you so much, Rupert, for such a fascinating and provocative talk. Really exciting. Just before the second half of this evening, the guided meditation, and in fact, just before, perhaps this is a really good point for you to share the host with Skeena, Rupert, but don't turn off your camera. I think your camera will stay on, hopefully, and then you can turn it off when you've changed it. So just before the second half of the evening, the guided meditation, I'd like to thank you again for joining us tonight and supporting the work of Schumacher College. We've got a further 3 talks in this series, which I hope you'll want to attend, and we're already working on the next series. I really apologise if you had a burning question and we didn't ask it. There were lots of great questions, and I'm really sorry that we didn't get there. I hope Rupert's talk has whetted your appetite, in which case I'd point you towards Extinction Rebellion's website to all the local groups and communities. And I'd also like to point out that we have a 5-day short course on eco-spiritual basis for rebelling against extinction, which is due to take place in May 2021 with Professor Rupert Read, Deepak Rugani, Skeena Rathore, Canada Gola, so that should be great. This has been our 3rd online Earth Talk, so we would love to have your feedback on how we can continue to improve, and certainly there's some technology questions again for me tonight, and also we would love to hear about the issues, topics or speakers you would like to see in the future. So as not to break the mood at the end of the meditation, I think this is going to be the last time I talk, but please can I pre-thank Skeena Rathore. We will leave the webinar open at the end for approximately 15 minutes, so it doesn't come to an abrupt conclusion. And if appropriate, you can chat and so on. So can I thank you all again for your very active participation, and thank once again Professor Rupert Read, and ask Rupert to introduce Skeena. And if at the end, possibly Skeena, if you can share the host back with me, then that would be brilliant. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. Yes, well, it's my very great pleasure to introduce my great friend and colleague, Skeena Rathore. You've already heard something about Skeena. She'll be known to many of you as someone with enormous vision, who is, I think, really, playing the role that I tried to describe in some of this talk in Extinction Rebellion and in other contexts of kind of bringing together the spiritual and the political. So there really couldn't be anyone better suited to give us a guided meditation, which we are hoping is going to complement the talk you've just heard in a different way, and make real the point that I tried to make about 10 minutes ago, that one of the reasons why what I was talking about could be regarded, I think, correctly as spiritual, is that it wouldn't have been possible to have given the talk I've given at all without the concept and practice of meditation being what it was and what it is. So Skeena, lovely to see you there. I will hand it over to you and leave you the rest of the evening.
Thank you, Rupert. And beloved Rupert, I think it's your birthday.
It is.
Huge happy birthday.
I thought this would be a very special way of spending my birthday.
Yeah. Well, let's share the love now and really enjoy your birthday with you.
I am. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Tim. What a privilege and joy to be here this evening with you all. Before we start, and when we transition into the meditation, if you have a candle to light, then please arrange that now. But we'll light our candles together. But before we dive in to a very special place, I want to say a few things about the enormous power that is available to us when we embody and feel what it is to bring our whole spiritual, heartfelt, mindful selves to this space of acceptance with vision, and that's the journey that hopefully we're going to make together this evening. And I want to pick up on something Rupert said that about not knowing what's possible, and I want to just pick up on the word knowing. We can never know, because this is where we're about to go, because it's not a knowing that is our guiding force. How could it be? Our heart usually is the guiding force when we make those big decisions in our life, whether it's choosing a partner or the home that we want to live in. It's the heart that's in charge, and the heart is beyond reason in many ways, and yet heart knows its reason, as Blaise Pascal said. And there in our hearts and in the power of it, rooted as Rupert describes in love, is the way we become. It's a becoming rather than a knowing, is what I think I am wanting to share with you, that feels true for me. It's our purpose to become. We all carry an image, a soul, and we carry our oakness in our acorn. We carry a unique and innate purpose that we come into the world being and becoming. And because that is so exciting, and I say this with real confidence because today I read The New Scientist, which I often read because my eldest is a subscriber, and the cover article was about the universe being conscious, and how there are mathematicians right now at Oxford University developing a new mathematical code for the consciousness that is the universe. So if the universe is conscious, which is also now what mathematicians are saying it is, then that implies a responsiveness. So the universe is responsive. And as a heart math teacher, one of the core tenets of where we're about to go is that the hypothesis, three core hypotheses that are going to be guiding us in the way that we will go, is that the Earth's magnetic fields are carriers of biologically relevant information that connect all living systems. And through our heart rate variability, we are synchronized with the Earth's field. We each have the potential to affect then the global information field. And that's what's really exciting, because this isn't just meditation. It's not just a spiritual practice. This is us giving information to global consciousness. This is us connecting into a field where we are all connected, and we are all in response to, and we are all in becoming with. And so that's what's really exciting. That's where we're about to go. We're about to share an information field, and we're about to become, to allow the manifestation, as Rupert talked about, of the repairing and the restoring that we are now guardians and stewards of in this great moment that we're living. So this is about upgrading your capacity, your strength, and your power, not just to be the visionaries, not just to speak mindfully to this, and to sit spiritually with this, and to rage and protest and to resist, but to see it into being, because you are going to be becoming it, which is quite a marvelous thing that we're going to do together these next years. So now I'm going to invite you to light your candle. I'm going to light mine, and we're about to go on this journey of becoming and upgrading our power to manifest, to vision, to become the world that we long for. Okay. I've lit my candle, and I'm just taking a look at its beautiful flame. And I'm going to invite you now to close your eyes and become as comfortable as you can be. in your body, resting your body in the most comfortable way you can. We're about to go on a very special journey. So as you become comfortable, as you feel your feet and your pelvis and your back and your shoulders and your neck, as you now begin to feel your whole body becoming aware, becoming alive to the senses that are the whole of you, allow yourself to trust this new space that you're transitioning into. And we're going to start by feeling into the center of our gravity, the launch pad of all your movement, where the appendicular and axial skeleton meet. The Japanese call it the hara point, the symphysis pubis point. Just a bone, two bones almost coming together, the bottom of your pelvis. Maybe you'd like to touch it just to feel it, or you can imagine it. Your center of gravity. So land your focus now, land your feeling in your center of gravity at your hara point, the symphysis pubis. And I want you to imagine this point reaching down now into the earth. So where you're sitting, imagine this as a light or as a warmth, as a sensation, reaching down into the earth, like an anchor. So you're rooting yourself and anchoring yourself from your center of gravity, your hara point. And then bring your attention to your feet, to the balls of your feet and the heart point in your feet. Between the two balls of your feet is your heart point. And again, send this point into the earth, anchoring and rooting yourself in the great earth's fields. And then coming up your body with your mind's eye, coming up your body to your pineal gland. See it as an almond shape. This is where our great imagination might come from. Imagine it turning over and feeling it soft and pliable, kind of soft and pliable almond. And feel how your ears, your nose, your eyes, all of those places where you are able to vision from, all the sensations, the senses that take in information for you to feel and transform into vision, just feel them come alive in you. So we're powering up your capacity to vision. So your pineal gland, your ears, your eyes, even your taste buds, your sense of smell. Turn the dial up on these senses. Imagine you're going to enter fully into these senses like never before. And then coming to the crown of your head. And feel the crown opening up as its own sensor to the heavens above, to the earth's atmosphere, to the winds in all directions, and to the heavens above, to the skies and that which is beyond. Feel your crown opening. maybe like a flower in bloom, opening your crown. And now coming to your heart with your mind's eye. Come to your heart. See your heart in your mind's eye. And coming to the breath of the heart. So imagine now that your heart is your breathing piece. And you're breathing into your heart and out from your heart. Slowing your breath down as much as you need. There's no perfect breath. Just the breath you need, as slow as you need it. Into your heart and out from your heart. And as you breathe this heart breath, remember your anchors from your feet, your symphysis pubis, the crown to the heavens. And remember the aliveness of your senses and your visioning capacity. So you're holding all of these sensations as you breathe in and out from your heart. And as this breath feels lighter and feels more joyous, feels more expansive, feels more spacious, feel the warmth, the glow that it is in your chest and through your body. Feel how the heart lights the whole of you as it breathes slowly. And as your heart glows and makes more and more space for all that it cares for, all that it appreciates, it also remembers that which it cares for, that which it loves, that which it feels compassion and joy for. Let it remember the sensation as you breathe. Feel that sensation. It may be a memory directly of something, a place or a person, an animal, something. Or it is just a sensation of the heart. The depth of the heart's love. That's what we're feeling into. That which makes all possible. That which leads us into becoming. Feel the warmth, feel the glow of your heart as you keep breathing in this beautiful space. You're creating heart rate coherence. And now we're going to join this power of the heart to your visioning capacity, to the power of your visioning, of your becoming. So feeling the magnificence of your heart, the magnificence of you becoming. This is very own radical acceptance of how great you are, how much you are needed, how important, how unique, how purposeful you are. Knowing that you are necessary, completely, entirely necessary for this great becoming that we are all sharing in this moment. You're going to vision the repair and the restoration. Let's go to the earth first. So with your heart alive, with all your senses alive, stand on the earth that is repaired and restored, and feel it through your feet. What does the feet, do your feet sense and feel of an earth that feels restored, of soil that feels restored, the richness of this soil? How does it feel? This is your future self. This is your oak. This is the oak of the world that you are visioning. This is the becoming. How does the earth, how does the land feel that is restored? How lush does it feel? How resplendent does it feel? How exquisite does it feel? Feel this through your feet. And take a breath with your heart, in and out, as you stand on a restored earth. And look around now with your senses at this restored earth. Look with your eyes. What can you see? Listen with your ears. What do you hear of a restored world? Is there a smell? What do you taste of a restored world? Of land, of soil that is restored, of forests, of woodlands, of hedgerows, of wetlands. Do you see them? Can you hear them? Can you feel them? Can you taste them? You can. Allow your heart to be in this space with you. Keep breathing in and out from your heart. And then the water. Travel with me now. Travel to the water. You can fly there. You can walk there. Travel to the water. Travel to the oceans. Travel to the streams, to the rivers, to the lakes, to the seas, to the reed beds, to the reservoirs. What do these restored waters look like? Feel like? Sound like? Touch them with your hands, with your feet. Allow this restored water, allow it to make you smile. Allow your heart to smile with it. Travel with me now. Travel to the air. Travel to the air around you. What does the restored air feel like on your skin? What does it sound like? What does it smell like? Sense it with all your senses, all your visioning capacity. And feel it through your heart and smile with it. Let your heart smile as you sense this restoration of the air in all directions and up above, limitless air. Feel its freedom, feel its purity, feel its power, feel its life force, feel its breath. Restored air, the breath of restored air. Travel with me now to the fire. Imagine fire however you'd like to imagine it, either as a small fire or just your candle, or a large fire or a volcanic eruptive fire. See this fire as the fire of transformation. The fire that allows some seeds to actually become. Some of our finest trees become through the fire. So see fire now as that transformative, beautiful, warming, restorative force that it also is. See the restoration of fire. And with this image, come back to the fire of your heart. See it as its own magnificent, warming, inspiring, transformative fire that you carry in you. Always. The fire of your heart, your lit heart, your heart that lights others. And this is the fire that we will carry forward from this meditation. Because you have seen and felt and heard and loved a restored planet, a restored earth. So it will become. Taking your breath here, these last 2 or 3 breaths now together in this coherent field. Breathing in and out slowly. And we're going to come back now to the world outside our bodies in full awareness. And when you're ready, very slowly opening your eyes with gratitude for your whole body, thanking your heart, thanking all that you are, opening your eyes when you're ready. So, thank you ever so much, folks. That was a journey that I really enjoyed. I hope you did too. I am going to slowly hand back the host if I can. And I'm going to invite you to carry on talking in the chat channels. This is really important that we can stay and do this. If we want to, I believe there's 15 minutes for us to be able to do so. And I am just trying now to share the host back with Tim. Trying to work out that technology, but do please take this time to chat while I work that out. Thank you so much for your time. So much. Bless you all. Thank you.